Long ago, in the flourishing African kingdom of Zuari, there lived a queen whose name carried both reverence and fear. The people admired her wealth, her beauty, and the grandeur of her palace, but they also whispered of her pride. Every evening, the palace walls gleamed with golden lamps, and music drifted from the courtyards. Servants hurried through the halls, their heads bowed low, for none dared to displease the queen. Among these servants was a humble maid named Lami, who worked tirelessly day and night. Her task, though simple, was sacred. She prepared the queen's bed each evening, making sure it was fit for royalty. The sheets were of the finest silk, perfumed with rare oils from distant lands. Lami's hands, though calloused from labor, handled the sheets with care, for she knew one mistake could cost her dearly. Yet, in her heart, she often wondered if the queen's comfort came at the cost of everyone else's suffering. That evening, as the moon rose over Zuari, Lami entered the queen's chamber with weary steps. She carried a small bottle of jasmine oil, her last chore for the night being to scent the royal pillows. She sprinkled the perfume lightly, her fingers moving gently across the silk as though afraid of staining it. Her stomach rumbled with hunger, but she ignored it, for her service came first. As she spread the sheet smoothly, her eyes lingered on the bed. It looked like a cloud, soft and inviting, its silk glistening under the golden lamps. "How does it feel," she whispered softly to herself, "to rest on such softness, when my own mat is thin and rough?" Her words vanished into the silence of the room, but her heart beat faster as a dangerous thought took root. She looked around. The chamber was empty. The queen was not yet back. The temptation gnawed at her like a restless spirit. Lami stood frozen, her hands trembling. She shook her head, whispering, "No, I must not. It is forbidden." She turned away, but her tired body betrayed her. The weight of the day pressed upon her shoulders. She had swept the courtyards, washed endless piles of linen, and polished the marble floors until her knees ached. Now, staring at the queen's bed, she felt her resolve weakening. "What harm would it bring if I rested for just a moment?" she murmured. The perfume still lingered in the air, sweet and soothing, pulling her closer like a spell. At last, unable to resist, she set aside her lamp, slipped off her worn sandals, and gently lay down. The silk sheets embraced her skin with a softness she had never known. "Oh," she sighed, her eyelids heavy. "This is heaven." Within minutes, exhaustion carried her into sleep. The queen returned sooner than expected. Her golden anklets jingled as she entered the chamber, her face set in stern majesty. But when her eyes fell upon the bed, her breath caught in fury. There, sprawled on her silken sheets, lay Lami, fast asleep like a child. The queen's voice thundered across the room. "What treachery is this?" Lami jolted awake, her heart racing. She scrambled to her knees, her lips trembling. "Forgive me, my queen. I was tired, I meant no harm." But the queen's face was stone. She pointed to the door and barked. "Guards!" Heavy footsteps echoed, and 2 guards stormed in. The queen's finger trembled with rage as she shouted, "Take her. She has defiled my bed. Let her be punished." The guards seized Lami, dragging her to the cold floor. She cried, clinging to their feet, "Mercy, my queen. Please forgive me." But the queen's eyes were sharp as daggers. "No mercy for insolence," she declared. The guards raised their whips, and the crack of leather sliced through the air. Lami screamed, tears rolling down her face as the lashes struck her back. Each blow burned, but worse than the pain was the knowledge that her queen's heart was unmoved. The other servants peeked nervously from the corridor, whispering, she should not have touched the queen's bed. Yet in their eyes, there was pity. They saw a faithful maid suffering for a mistake born of exhaustion. Still, the queen stood firm, her chin raised high, as though proving her power. Lami sobbed, until suddenly, something within her shifted. Her tears dried, her lips curved strangely, and a laugh escaped her bruised mouth. The laughter startled everyone. One guard froze mid-swing. Another glanced at the queen, unsure. Lami's shoulders shook, but not from sobs. She was laughing, breathless and raw. "Enough," the queen snapped. "Why do you mock me, girl?" Lami lifted her face, streaked with tears and dust. "I do not mock you, my queen," she said quietly. "I laugh at my own foolishness." The queen narrowed her eyes. "Speak clearly." Lami swallowed, winced, then answered, "I touched this bed for a moment, and I have felt the sting of punishment. But you, my queen, rest on it every night. If a single moment cost me lashes, what will your countless nights cost you, before the one who judges queens and servants alike?" The room fell silent, as if the air itself had paused. Even the lamps flickered softly, and the guards lowered their whips, shifting uncomfortably on their feet. The queen's lips parted, but no sound came. Her pride pressed against her chest like armor too tight to breathe. She turned away, waved her hand, and muttered, "Take her away." Yet her gaze, though hard, trembled on the edge of thought. They led Lami to the servants' quarters, her back marked with thin lines of fire. A kindly cook named Iri hurried to her side with a bowl of water. "Hold still, child," Iri whispered, dabbing gently. "Why did you say such words?" Lami winced and smiled faintly. "Because truth is a river, Mama Iri. It flows even when our throats are dry." Iri sighed. "Truth sometimes brings trouble." "And sometimes," Lami replied, "it brings healing." Outside, the palace buzzed with rumors. She laughed at the queen, a young page muttered. "No one laughs and lives," another warned. But Iri shook her head. "Wisdom does not die easily." In the corridor, two guards exchanged uneasy glances. "Her words, did you hear them?" one asked. "I heard," the other murmured. "That bed looked different to me tonight." They fell quiet. Across the palace, the queen sat alone, her fingers tracing the carved arm of her chair, her mind replaying the maid's sentence as if it were a song she could not silence. Night swam over Zuari, and the queen tried to sleep. She lay on the silk sheets, but they felt strange beneath her. "Ridiculous," she told herself. "I am queen." She closed her eyes and willed slumber to come. Yet Lami's voice rose in the darkness. "What will your countless nights cost you?" The queen turned, then turned again. The pillows were too soft, the eiderdown too warm, the perfume too sweet. She sat up and rang a bell. A servant hurried in. "More jasmine, my queen?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, remove it." He blinked, stunned. "Remove the perfume?" "Yes," she said sharply. "Take it away." When he left, the queen stood and walked barefoot across the cool floor. She stopped at the window and looked at the city. Far below, small lamps burned in humble homes, each light a beating heart. "What do they whisper about me?" she wondered aloud. The silence did not answer, but the emptiness of her chamber did. At dawn, she summoned her chief adviser, Odin, a man whose beard was white and whose eyes were steady as a river stone. He bowed. "Your Majesty." She waved him to rise. "Last night, a maid spoke words that pierced me," she began. "Do you know of the incident?" Odin nodded slowly. "The palace always knows by morning." She studied him. "Is there truth in it?" Odin clasped his hands. "Do you want comfort or clarity, my queen?" "Clarity," she said after a pause. "Then hear me plainly," Odin replied. "Beds are not sinful, but hearts can be. Luxury is not a crime, but it can make compassion fall asleep." She frowned. "So I am guilty?" "I do not judge," Odin said gently. "I only ask, when your people weep, do you hear them? When your servants faint, do you see them? When you rest, does your rest bring them any rest?" The queen's gaze faltered. "I do not know." Odin bowed his head. "Then perhaps it is time to find out." She dismissed Odin and called for her handmaiden, Sepha. "Bring me the maid," she ordered. "Lami?" Sepha asked, surprised. "Yes." "And send for the royal healer. Let her wounds be treated properly." Sepha nodded and hurried away. Minutes stretched like long shadows. The queen paced. She paused by the bed, pressed her palm to the cool silk, then pulled her hand back as if from a flame. When Sefa returned, Lami stood beside her, cleaned and bandaged, eyes lowered. "Your Majesty," Lami whispered. "Raise your head," the queen said. Lami obeyed. Their eyes met, one pair proud but searching, the other humble but unafraid. "You spoke boldly last night," the queen began. "Does your God truly judge queens and servants alike?" Lami answered softly. "He judges hearts, my queen. He is not dazzled by silk." The queen exhaled. "And what do you see when you look at me?" Lami hesitated. "I see a woman who can choose." "Choose what? To be remembered for her throne or for her kindness?" The queen dismissed the guards and invited Lami to sit. Lami shook her head. "I cannot sit beside your bed." The queen managed a small smile. "Then sit by the window." Lami obeyed, perching carefully. "Tell me about your life," the queen said. Lami's surprise flickered. "My life is not grand. I rise before dawn. I polish floors. I wash linen until my knuckles split. My mother is gone. My father is old. I send him most of my coin." The queen shifted uneasily. "Have you ever slept on a soft bed?" Lami smiled faintly. "Once. Last night." The queen's cheeks warmed. "And for that you were whipped." "For that I was seen," Lami replied. "And you spoke," the queen said. "Yes," Lami answered. "Because fear is a cloak too heavy for the poor. It breaks their backs if they wear it forever." Silence settled, not hostile, only full. The queen stared at the city again, as if searching for a door inside her own heart. Before dismissing Lami, the queen said, "You may rest today. Your duties are suspended." Lami bowed. "Thank you, my queen." After she left, the queen rang for Sefa. "Send word to the kitchens," she ordered. "I will take breakfast in the courtyard." Sefa blinked. "Alone?" "No," the queen replied. "With the workers." Sefa's jaw parted. "The workers?" The queen nodded. "And tell the treasurer I will review palace expenses today." Word flew faster than birds. By mid-morning, the queen sat at a long wooden table beneath a tamarind tree, while cooks ladled porridge into clay bowls. Laborers approached, hesitant and shy. "Sit," the queen said, her voice gentle but firm. "Eat." A mason cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, we are not dressed for your presence." "You are dressed for hunger," she answered, sliding a bowl toward him. "That is reason enough to sit." One by one, they ate, unsure if this was kindness or a test. The porridge tasted plain, and yet, to the queen, it tasted like truth. Advisors fidgeted at the edges of the courtyard, whispering. "This breaks tradition," one murmured. "It bends it," Odin corrected, watching carefully. The queen turned to a young woman with raw hands. "What is your name?" "Eba," she said, startled. "What do you do?" "Laundry, your Majesty." The queen nodded. "How many sheets pass through your hands each day?" Eba glanced at the others, then answered. 50. More on festival weeks." The queen's brow creased. "And your pay?" Eba's lips thinned. "Enough to eat some days. Not enough to breathe easy any day." The queen swallowed. "Who sets your wages?" All eyes slid to the treasurer standing stiffly nearby. He cleared his throat. "We follow long-standing scales, your Majesty." "Then we will shorten them," she replied. A murmur ran through the crowd. Odin hid a smile in his beard. The queen lifted her bowl again and said, "Eat well. Work should not taste like punishment." That evening, she returned to her chamber. The bed waited, luminous and still. She approached it slowly, then stopped. "I will not sleep here tonight," she whispered. She called Sefa. "Bring a mat." Sefa stared. "A mat, my queen?" "Yes." "Lay it by the window." When the mat was placed, the queen sat, then stretched out carefully. The woven reeds pressed her shoulder blades. A breeze slipped through the lattice, cool and honest. She closed her eyes. Sleep came, not as a command but as a gift. In the deep of night, she dreamed of a river. On one bank stood a throne of gold, on the other, a long table where the poor were laughing. The river asked, "Which shore?" She woke before dawn, a clarity like fresh water in her chest. She rose, folded the mat herself, and whispered, "Today must meet the river." At court, nobles lined the hall in garments bright as birds. They bowed, expecting decrees about harvest and taxes. The queen stood beneath the carved canopy and spoke instead of linen and wages, of kitchens and lamps. "We will adjust pay," she announced. "We will shorten work hours. We will provide shoes to those who stand all day." A murmur rose, protest disguised as surprise. One lord stepped forward. "Your Majesty, the treasury cannot carry such kindness." She held his gaze. "Then the palace will carry less luxury." Gasps fluttered like moths. "Sell what gathers dust," she continued. "Silks, ornaments, the second chariot." The treasurer sputtered. "Your Majesty." Odin's eyes shone. The queen lifted a hand, quieting the room. "If we cannot feed the hands that build our comfort, we do not deserve comfort." The room hushed, and in that quiet, something old cracked like thin ice, and something new began to breathe. After court, she asked to see Lami again. Lami entered, unsure. "You sent for me, my queen?" The queen nodded. "I owe you words." Lami blinked. "You owe me nothing." "I owe you humility," the queen said. "Last night I was a closed door. Today I try to be a window." Lami's eyes softened. "Windows let in the morning," she murmured. The queen gestured to a small table. "Sit, please. Share tea with me." They sat and steam curled between them. "Tell me," the queen said, "what would dignity look like for the servants?" Lami hesitated, then spoke, careful but brave. "Time to rest. Fair pay. A voice that is heard without fear." The queen nodded slowly. "Then we will build those 3 pillars." Lami looked down at her bandaged hands and whispered, "I will work for you with joy, my queen." "Work with me," the queen corrected gently. "Joy should not belong to one side alone." News spread across Zuari like dawn across a plain. Some laughed. "A soft queen," they said. Others listened. "A strong queen," they answered. At the marketplace, a basket weaver named Koro said, "Let us see if our taxes change." A widow named Aku replied, "My son works at the palace. Yesterday, he came home with bread." That night, the queen visited the city in a simple cloak. Odin and Sepha followed at a distance. She stepped into a lantern-lit clinic where a healer tended the poor. "What do you need?" the queen asked softly. The healer, startled, bowed. "Medicine. Clean water. A roof that does not drip." The queen touched the leaky beam and nodded. "We will mend the roof. And the wells." On the walk back, Odin said, "Majesty, some will resist." "Let them," the queen replied. "If change were easy, it would not be needed." The nobles pressed back. In secret, 3 of them gathered in a perfumed chamber. Lord Tano hissed, "She sells our luxuries." Lady Meek fanned herself sharply. "Today it is silk. Tomorrow our titles." Baron Orr muttered, "The people cheer. We must make her look foolish." They plotted a spectacle, a grand feast to tempt the queen back to excess, a theater of gold and waste. Invitations spread with honeyed words. When the queen arrived, the hall blazed with chandeliers. Tables groaned beneath roasted peacocks, sugared fruits, towers of cakes. Musicians swelled. A path of petals led to a throne carved with jewels. "For you, Majesty," Lord Tano said silkily. The queen regarded the display. Her face remained unreadable, but her eyes caught Lami's, who stood by the doorway, watching with quiet worry. The queen smiled gently, as if remembering the river in her dream. She stepped to the throne, but instead of sitting, she turned and called to the servants lingering at the edges. "Come," she said warmly. Murmurs rippled. "Eat." The lord stiffened. "Majesty, this feast is for you." She lifted a hand. "I am full of decisions. Let my people be full of food." Tentative steps became a stream. Servants approached, eyes wide. The queen lifted the first plate and handed it to an old stableman. "For your years," she said. She gave the second to a timid scullery girl. For your dawns. She gave the third to a guard who had once raised a whip. For your better choices. The hall shifted. Music softened. The noble's anger bent under the weight of watching. Odin murmured to himself, "This is how a crown learns to fit." Lami stood still, tears bright but unfallen, as if the world had finally spoken her language. The next day, the queen summoned the treasurer with ledgers. "Show me the accounts," she said. He stammered, sweat beading at his temple. "It is complex, Majesty." "We will make it simple," she replied. Odin brought a chalk slate. Line by line, they peeled away pomp from need, vanity from service. "This cost could dig a well," the queen observed. "This one could buy medicine. This one could raise wages." The treasurer swallowed. "Shall I implement cuts?" "Implement fairness," she answered. "Fairness may look like cuts in some rooms and increases in others." She signed new orders with a steady hand. "And one more thing," she added. "Create a council of workers, one from each wing of the palace. They will meet me monthly and speak without fear." The treasurer blinked. "Without fear." The queen's gaze didn't waver. "Do you fear the truth?" He lowered his eyes. "Sometimes." "Then practice listening," she said. "It makes fear smaller." Weeks passed. The palace softened and strengthened at once, like leather well-oiled. Lami healed. She returned to work with a new steadiness, not from pride but from belonging. One afternoon, the queen found her in the linen room, folding fresh sheets. "Do you hate this bed now?" the queen asked, touching the smooth fabric. Lami smiled. "Beds are innocent. Hearts choose." The queen nodded. "I have sold most of my silks. I keep one set for ceremonies." Lami looked at her. "Ceremonies end. People remain." The queen chuckled. "You are relentless." "I am grateful," Lami replied. "Grateful people are hard teachers." They folded in companionable silence. After a while, the queen said softly, "The first night I slept on a mat, I thought I would ache. Instead, I dreamed." Lami lifted a corner of linen. "Dreams are lighter than pride." Not everyone applauded. A group of merchants, upset by the decline in palace extravagance, complained in the marketplace. "Our silk rots on the shelf," one cried. "Our perfumes sit unopened," another groaned. The queen heard and invited them to the audience hall. "Your Majesty," the silk seller protested, "your changes wound our trade." The queen listened. "Shall I abandon justice to dress your bolts of cloth?" she asked gently. He flushed. "No, but your skill is real," she continued. "Turn it toward durability. Make garments for workers that last. The palace will purchase those." The perfume seller frowned. "And me? Create soaps for clinics and herbs for healers," she said. "Let your fragrances bless the sick." Silence, then slow nods. Profit adjusted its gaze. Outside, children raced across the courtyard, their laughter like a verdict. One evening, the queen walked alone in the garden, lamplight strewn like yellow petals across the path. Lami joined her, steps quiet. "Are you well, my queen?" she asked. The queen smiled. "Better than I deserve." "And you?" "Stronger than I expected," Lami replied. They paused by a fountain. Water whispered over stone. "Lami," the queen said, "I would make you steward of a servant's council. Will you accept?" Lami's eyes widened. "Me?" "You," the queen affirmed. "Not to scold me, but to steady me. I will need reminders when comfort tries to sing me to sleep." Lami lowered her head, overwhelmed. "I accept. I will be gentle when I can, and firm when I must." The queen laughed softly. "You already are." A breeze lifted the jasmine vines. For once, the scent did not choke. It blessed. The next council meeting filled a small chamber with voices usually hushed. EBA spoke about sore hands and better soaps. A cook asked for safer stoves. A guard admitted, "The whip is a failure of imagination." Odin recorded every word. The queen listened without interrupting, only asking, "What would dignity look like here?" Answers multiplied. Rest corners, water jars in corridors, lighter loads, clear grievance steps. We will do these in order, the queen said. Not all at once, but none forgotten. Lami closed the meeting with a simple sentence. We have begun. Afterward, as people filed out, the old stableman stopped beside the queen. Majesty? She turned. Yes. He touched his chest. I have served 3 rulers. I feared 2. Today, I sleep without fear. She placed her hand over his briefly. Then the palace is finally a home. The tale traveled beyond Zuari on traders' tongues. A queen who sold her silks, who ate with workers, who slept on a mat to study her own heart. Some mocked, calling, the barefoot queen. Others bowed when they spoke her name. When messengers asked what to write in the royal annals, the queen answered, record our wells, our wages, our windows. Windows, Majesty, they asked. She smiled. Yes. The ones we opened. In the servants' wing, Lami tucked fresh sheets on a narrow bed and smoothed them with care. Sepha entered, grinning. You still touch linen like prayer, she teased. Lami laughed. Prayer has many fabrics. She paused, then added softly, do you remember the night I laughed? Sepha nodded. We all heard. Lami's gaze warmed. I thought I was laughing alone. I see now the whole kingdom was listening. And in the years to come, they would call her ruler the humble queen of Zuari, not for the weight of her crown, but for the lightness she brought to every heart that bowed beneath it. Seasons passed, and the kingdom of Zuari began to change. Wells sprang up in dry villages, roofs stopped leaking in clinics, and servants carried lighter burdens. Travelers who came to the city returned home with a strange tale. Their queen eats porridge with masons and laundresses. Some laughed, shaking their heads. A queen who lowers herself is no queen at all. But others leaned forward, whispering, or perhaps she is the truest queen we have heard of. In the palace, nobles still grumbled, but their words bounced against the walls like pebbles against stone. The people's affection had become her fortress. One night, Odin visited the queen. Majesty, he said quietly, your story will outlive you. She smiled faintly. Stories outlive us all. The question is whether they make others bow or rise. The queen continued her nightly walks through the city. Children ran to her with laughter, offering flowers plucked from dusty fields. Take this, Mama Queen, they cried. She bent low to receive them, her robes brushing the ground. In the market, a farmer pressed yams into her hands. For your kindness, he said. She shook her head. Keep them. He grinned. Majesty, I have more than enough this year. That is your doing. Lami, walking at her side, whispered, do you see, my queen? The river has widened. The queen glanced at her. Do you still call me my queen? Always, Lami replied softly. But now, I also call you sister. The queen stopped, touched, and for once words failed her. She simply held Lami's hand, and the city lights burned like stars brought close. Years later, when age began to silver her hair, the queen stood once more before the court. Nobles, merchants, servants, and farmers all gathered together, a crowd not divided but joined. She raised her voice. I once believed thrones were built to lift one above. I know now they are built to lift one within. If a queen cannot stoop to wash the feet of her people, she is no queen at all. Murmurs of agreement filled the hall. Lami, now older too, stood at her side as steward. Odin, leaning on his staff, nodded proudly. Your Majesty, he said, you have turned pride into a servant and humility into a crown. The queen smiled. Then may Zuari never forget that greatness is not in gold, but in goodness. When the queen passed, the kingdom mourned not with wailing, but with gratitude. They carried her mat, not her bed, in the funeral procession, for she had asked it so. Bury me not as a ruler of silk, her decree had said, but as a servant of the same ground where my people walk. Crowds lined the streets, holding flowers, lifting their hands. Old Eba whispered through tears. She made work lighter. The stableman sighed. she made fear smaller. And Lami, her voice steady though her heart ached, said, she made laughter holy. The bells of Zuari tolled, not with sorrow alone but with a rhythm like hope, as if even death could not silence the lesson she had lived. And so, in every corner of Zuari, from the poorest hut to the noble halls, her story was told again and again. Mothers whispered it to children at night. Elders recited it by firesides. Travelers carried it to distant lands. She was remembered as the humble queen of Zuari, a woman who once punished a maid, only to be transformed by that maid's courage. Her legacy was not the weight of her jewels or the size of her feasts, but the compassion she sowed like seeds. And whenever pride threatened to rise in the heart of a ruler, someone would murmur the old words, if a moment on a bed costs lashes, what will countless nights cost before God? In that simple sentence lay the power that had turned a throne of gold into a seat of grace, and a proud queen into a legend of humility. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more dramatic tales. Your support keeps us going, and we can't wait to bring you the next story.